I had just moved into my first apartment. It wasn't anything special, a small place, but it was mine. I remember that first week really clearly because everything still felt new. Every sound, every creak. I hadn't learned yet which noises were normal and which weren't. That night, it was around 8:30 p.m. I was in the kitchen putting away groceries when I heard the doorknob move. At first, I got really excited that my then-boyfriend was home. I walked toward the door, already halfway ready to say something. Then it hit me. It was only 8:30, and he was due home from work around 10:30. I stopped walking. The doorknob moved again. Just the sound of someone turning it slowly, like they were trying a key. I remember standing there completely still, listening. I went to the kitchen window and looked outside. I couldn't see my boyfriend's car. I couldn't see any car I recognized. That's when I felt that drop in my stomach. The doorknob kept moving for a few more seconds, then it stopped. For a moment, everything went quiet. I told myself maybe someone had the wrong apartment. That happens, right? Then I heard metal scraping against the door, a different sound, like someone was sliding something between the door and the frame. That's when I panicked. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I didn't even think. I just grabbed the first thing I could find, a kitchen knife, then ran to the bathroom and locked the door. It was the only room with a solid lock. I hated how scared I felt holding it. I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub, listening. I could hear them at the door, the metal scraping again, pressure against the frame. They were trying to force it open. Every few seconds, the door made this dull thump, like they were testing how much force it would take. I called 911 and whispered. I remember the dispatcher telling me to stay quiet, to stay where I was. Those 3 minutes felt endless. I kept thinking the lock was going to give out, that I would hear the door open. Then suddenly, it stopped. Just silence. A few minutes later, I heard sirens. The police knocked and called my name. I didn't come out until they told me it was safe. They searched the area around the building. That's when they found him, an elderly man walking nearby. He was carrying a knife and a crowbar. The police told me he used to live in that apartment, that he believed we had stolen his belongings when we moved in. They said he was very delusional. I don't remember much after that. I didn't sleep that night. Even now, years later, my heart still stops whenever someone knocks on my door.
I took the job because it sounded easy. A couple my family knew needed someone to stay at their house for a week while they were out of town. Nothing fancy, just be there, keep the lights on, make sure the place didn't look empty. It was in Marietta, Georgia, in one of those quiet suburban neighborhoods where people actually wave at each other. I'd house sat before, plenty of times. This was the first time something actually happened. Before they left, they showed me the house real quick, where I'd be sleeping, how the alarm worked, which door sticks if you don't pull it shut hard enough. They gave me the code, a spare key, and reminded me to lock up at night. The first night felt normal. I grabbed Wendy's, sat on the couch, and let the TV play in the background. I remember Friends being on while I scrolled on my phone. Nothing felt strange. Nothing stood out. I went to bed thinking it would be a boring week. The second night was when I noticed it. A door downstairs wasn't the way I left it. Not wide open, just different enough to make me stop walking and stare at it. I told myself I was overthinking it. Different house, different layout, different habits. Then I saw dirt near the back entryway. Not a lot, just enough to look fresh. That's when I started paying attention. After that, I couldn't relax. I kept noticing small things that didn't mean much on their own, but together they made my stomach feel tight. A cabinet under the sink wasn't fully closed. One room felt colder than the rest of the house, and there was a smell I couldn't place. I walked around checking locks like an idiot. Everything was locked, and somehow that made it worse. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Not because I saw anyone, not because I heard anything loud, but because it felt like the house was being careful around me. That night, I went upstairs earlier than usual. I didn't turn the TV on. I didn't even plug my phone in downstairs. I just laid there in the dark, listening. Around 2:40 in the morning, I heard slow movement, careful movement downstairs, like someone shifting their weight, trying not to make noise. I held my breath without even realizing it. Eventually, it stopped. A few seconds later, I felt it. Someone was standing outside the bedroom door. I didn't hear the knob turn. I didn't hear scratching, just a presence on the other side, like they were listening, waiting, trying to figure out if I was asleep. I stayed completely still. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't even blink. I was terrified that any movement would tell them exactly where I was. When it finally moved away, I didn't sleep again that night. As soon as it was light out, I called the police. They searched the house from top to bottom. At first, they didn't find anything. Then one of them asked me if I'd been using the basement storage area. I told him no. He showed me why he asked. Behind some shelving near the foundation wall, there was a narrow, unfinished space, just enough space for someone to crawl into and stay out of sight. They said it was clear someone had been using it. They never found who it was, and I didn't stay in that house another night. When I was a kid, spending summers at my grandmother's house was the highlight of the year. She lived in a large, old house just outside a small town. Nothing fancy, but big enough that it felt enormous when you were a child. Long hallways, a basement that always felt colder than the rest of the house. Rooms that smelled faintly like dust and old furniture. Every summer, a few of us cousins would rotate in and out, depending on who was on vacation, who was visiting relatives, and who had summer camps. Sometimes the house was full and loud. Other times it was quiet. This particular summer, there was a stretch of a few days where it was just me and my grandmother. That wasn't the original plan. Two of my cousins were supposed to arrive earlier, but something got mixed up with travel dates. I didn't mind. I was 12, old enough to feel independent, but still young enough to enjoy being spoiled by my grandma. She trusted me more than she probably should have. One night, she told me she was heading out to her weekly bingo game. She'd be gone for a few hours, maybe 4 or 5 at most. Normally, she avoided leaving any of us kids alone, but I insisted it would be fine. I remember saying something like, "I'll just play video games and watch TV. I won't even notice you're gone." She hesitated, then agreed. That decision changed how I looked at people for a long time. Grandma left just before sunset. I watched her walk down the driveway and disappear down the street, purse tucked under her arm, moving slower than she used to. I locked the door behind her. At least, I thought I did. For the first half hour, everything felt normal. I was stretched out on the living room floor with my handheld console, volume low, TV on in the background, more for noise than anything else. I wasn't scared. The house didn't feel creepy yet. Then the doorbell rang. It startled me more than it should have. My first thought was that Grandma had forgotten something, maybe her keys or phone. I didn't even check the clock. I just walked over and pulled the door open. That was a mistake. Standing on the porch was a young woman I didn't immediately recognize. She smiled before I even had time to react, stepped forward and hugged me like she'd known me my whole life. Then she closed the door behind her. I remember standing there confused, trying to catch up with what was happening. She laughed a little and said my name. That's when it clicked. She said she was my cousin. She used my uncle's name. She mentioned my other cousins. She knew exactly how we were related. She even pointed out photos on the wall, casually mentioning when they were taken, like she remembered being there.
Her name was Alice. I hadn't seen her in years. She looked different than I remembered, obviously older, but not in a way that felt wrong, just changed. Taller, sharper around the edges, more confident. She carried a large duffel bag and dropped it on the couch like she'd done it 100 times before. I told her grandma was out for the evening. She seemed disappointed but not surprised. She said she was staying the night anyway and would see grandma when she got back. At no point did anything feel threatening. That's the part that still messes with me. For the next hour, we just talked. She asked about my parents, about school, about how things were going. A few times she mixed up small details, things she should have known, but she brushed it off easily, apologizing and laughing about how bad her memory was. I didn't question it. Why would I? She was family. Eventually, she brought up the basement. She asked if I remembered playing hide and seek in the house when we were younger. I vaguely did. The house felt massive back then. She laughed and said the basement used to scare all of us, except her. She claimed she'd hidden down there once and no one could find her for hours. I honestly didn't remember that. I told her the basement didn't scare me anymore. That's when she smiled in a way I didn't fully understand at the time. She dared me to go down there. I rolled my eyes and said it wasn't a big deal. She offered me $10 if I'd go down and prove it. $10 was a lot of money to a 12-year-old. I grabbed a flashlight and headed down the stairs. The moment I reached the bottom, the door slammed shut. I laughed at first, thinking she was messing around. Then I heard the lock. I shouted her name. No answer. Minutes passed. Then more. I banged on the door until my hands hurt. I told myself she'd let me out any second. She didn't. Hours went by. The basement was lit, but it felt smaller with every minute. My throat was raw from yelling. I cried harder than I ever had in my life. I begged. I promised not to tell. Nothing. When the door finally opened, it was Grandma. She was shaking. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I told her everything. Her face drained of color when I mentioned Alice. She asked if I was sure, really sure about who it was. Later, something was discovered missing from the house, something valuable. Grandma never told me exactly what it was. Only years later did I learn the truth. Alice had been watching the house. She knew when Grandma would be gone. She knew I'd be alone. And she'd brought something with her that night. A hammer. She left it behind. I don't know what she planned to do if I hadn't gone into the basement willingly. I don't want to know. I never saw Alice again. And to this day, I don't answer the door unless I know exactly who's on the other side.
I was 15 when this happened, and it's the reason I still lock doors out of pure habit, even when I'm home alone in the middle of the day. It was a Friday night, a little after 11 p.m. My parents had gone to a casino about 40 minutes away. It wasn't unusual. They'd done it before, and I'd stayed home plenty of times without any problems. So it was just me and my dog. Her name was Luna. She was a black lab, gentle to a fault, the kind of dog that got excited over leaves falling or people walking by the house. She never growled, ever. I was on the couch with my laptop, messaging friends and half watching videos on TV. Everything was normal until Luna suddenly lifted her head and stared at the front windows. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then she barked, sharp, alert. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. We lived near a main road, so noise at night wasn't unusual. I figured it was a car or someone walking past. I pulled the curtain back just enough to look outside. The driveway was empty. No extra cars, no movement. But Luna didn't relax. She paced from the front windows toward the side of the house, nails clicking against the floor. Her body was tense, like she was tracking something. That's when I felt it. That uneasy feeling you get when you realize you're not reacting to a sound anymore. You're reacting to instinct. Then I heard it. A soft knock. Just enough to test if someone was inside. I froze. Luna rushed to the front door and started barking again, louder this time. I didn't move. I didn't look through the peephole. I was suddenly terrified that if I did, someone would be standing there, already watching me. The knocking stopped. For a few seconds, I thought that was it. Then another knock came, this time from the side door. My stomach dropped. That door wasn't visible from the street. You had to walk around the house to get to it. Whoever was outside wasn't just passing by. And then I heard the sound that confirmed it wasn't a coincidence. The doorknob. Slow and careful, like someone was trying not to make noise. A faint scraping followed, metal against the frame. Someone was trying to get in. Luna growled. I had never heard her do that before. Then came another sound, from the basement. Our basement door was hidden under the deck in the backyard. You wouldn't find it unless you already knew it was there. Hearing noise from that direction made my chest feel tight. And then, silence. The kind of silence that makes you hold your breath because it feels wrong. I whispered Luna's name, barely loud enough for her to hear, and she bolted down the stairs toward the basement hallway, barking like crazy. That snapped me out of it. I slammed the interior door that separated the basement hallway from the rest of the house and locked it, hands shaking so badly I missed the lock the first time. I didn't have a cell phone with service back then, so I grabbed the house phone and ran upstairs. My dad kept a gun locked in his room, and even though I had no idea what I was doing, it felt like the only option. Before I could even open the lockbox, I heard something else. A creak from the hallway. Slow footsteps. I backed into the closet with Luna, shut the door, and sat on the floor with the phone pressed to my ear, trying not to breathe too loudly. I called 911. When the operator answered, I whispered that someone was trying to break into my house. She told me to stay where I was. Officers were on their way. And then, Luna stopped barking. That terrified me more than the noise. A few seconds later, I heard the front door open. I thought someone had finally gotten inside. But then, I heard my dad and Mom's voice. Luna sprinted out of the closet before I could stop her, whining and wagging her tail like she'd never been so relieved in her life. I collapsed on the floor, shaking. My dad searched the entire house, inside and out, every room, the yard, under the deck. Nothing. No broken locks, no open doors. But I knew what I heard. The next afternoon, there was a knock at the front door. My heart dropped instantly. I stayed in the hallway while my dad answered it. The voice on the other side made my skin crawl. It was my mom's brother. Let's call him Ron. He was the kind of person who always made you uncomfortable without ever doing anything you could clearly point to. Too close, too intense, someone you avoided being alone with. He stood there holding an envelope and casually said, "Yeah, I tried stopping by last night to drop this off, but nobody answered." My dad's posture changed immediately. Inside the envelope was a card and a gift card thanking me for helping Ron's daughter with softball practice earlier that week, which was true, but I never asked for it, and I definitely didn't want him coming by late at night. My dad closed the door, then opened it again, and told him to never come to our house at night again. Ron laughed like it was no big deal. My dad didn't. After that, we stopped seeing him altogether. And to this day, the part that still messes with me isn't the knocking. It's the fact that it wasn't a stranger. It was someone who knew the house, who knew my parents weren't home, who knew where to try getting in. And even now, years later, I still have goosebumps when I hear a knock.